last weekend, I was in Lexington, Kentucky. I was visiting my best friend and his family, spending time with them, and I had the opportunity to baptize their 3 kids, which was really special and meaningful. And one of the things that my buddy and I did while we were there together is we went hiking. There's a kind of a wilderness area not too far from where they live in Lexington. And so he and I got some time away from the rest of his family just to kind of connect and be outdoors, which is what we love to do. And so we were kind of doing this multi-hour loop, and we were right at about the halfway point, and we needed to kind of make a switch and turn back so that we could get back to the parking lot where we left our car. And at the halfway point, there was kind of this fork in the road, and one direction was really well maintained. There were kind of the trail indicators, which are kind of the little white spots that they put on the trees. I could look down this way to the right, and I could see the trail indicators indicating that the trail continued this way. I had a good sense about, like, this seemed to be kind of in the logic of my brain. Like, this felt right. You know, you just kind of have that gut sense of, like, instead of left, I think we need to go right here. I had a pretty good intuition that we needed to follow the trail. The trail indicators were showing me the trail continued this direction. And then if you looked really far down the trail and down the hill, I saw a couple of other hikers who were way ahead of where we were. And so I'm like, hey, come on, it's this way. And he was like, no, it's this way. And the way he wanted to go was unmaintained. There were like deadfall all over the place. And I was like, I don't think that's right. And he goes, I promise you this is right. And so, you know, long friendship, 30 years, we go back and forth for, you know, probably 5 minutes about who's right, who's wrong, which way we should go. And I'm like, how do you know? And then he pulls out his phone, and he's got a GPS app that he's downloaded this specific area that we've been hiking. And he says, because the GPS says to go this way. Well, I'm not typically a shy and unconfident person, so I go, I know the GPS says to go this way, but me and all of my confidence and experience, this is the first time I'm hiking this place, but I think this is right. Like, look at all the trail indicators. Look at all of the people walking this way. This is the way that we got to go. And he just stands there and looks at me. And then I begin to remember that as much as I love the outdoors, God has not gifted me with a natural sense of direction. In fact, my lack of direction is so predictable that I can count on the fact that whatever my intuition says to do, whichever way feels right to go in my life, I usually just know that I need to go the opposite way. And that's how, like, lousy my sense of direction is. And so I thought about it for a second. I acquiesced, and I said, fine, we'll go your way. Well, sure enough, he was right. I hate it, but he was right. Like, I'm still mad about the fact that he was right and I was wrong. But I think what happened for me in that moment happens to us all of the time in our lives, right? We have this opportunity to go one direction or another. And we look at this fork. And there are all these indications that this is the right way to go. This is the successful way to go. We even have social proof. We see other people who are walking down this path. And we think, well, if it works for them, then it'll work for me, and I need to go this direction as well. And then we have this sense, like we just have a feeling about it. And we're like, I feel like this is what I need to be doing. And then there's this other direction we could go that's indicated by a truer, deeper reality, a source greater than our own wisdom, our own powers of observation, even our own experience, calling us to go a different direction. And I think you're probably a little bit like me, where despite that, you still want to go this way. It makes more sense to us. This is ultimately kind of the dynamic and the tension that Jesus is cautioning us about in this story that we're going to look at today. You see, we're in the middle of a series following the Gospel of John through the I am statements of Jesus. These are statements that Jesus gives to us in conversation and in interactions with people during that time period, where he reveals and continues to try to reveal who he is through these phrases. I am the bread of life, which we talked about 2 weeks ago. Last week, I am the light of the world. And today we're going to look at the next I am statement. Now, the reason that we're looking at these statements is not just so that we can hear who Jesus says he is. That's only half of the equation. It's important because who Jesus says he is matters for who we are and how we're supposed to live our life in relationship to him. You see, I believe that like the GPS, Jesus is the true and ultimate reality. And so our understanding of who he describes himself to be is the navigation and guidance system for our lives. When we have clarity around who Jesus is, we can have clarity around who we are and how we're supposed to live. And so let's jump into this next I am statement. This comes to us in the 10th chapter of the Gospel of John. If you have your Bibles, pull them out. If you have your phones, you can follow along as long as you don't make your grocery list. Stay true to the text. And here we go. Very truly, I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. Now, we're going to stop here because we're in the middle of a conversation. We're jumping into the middle of a conversation. So let me give you the background context and what's happening here, and then hopefully it'll make a little more sense. So in the last chapter, chapter 9, Jesus heals a man who's been born blind. He heals him on the Sabbath, and this makes all of the religious leaders of the day really angry. And instead of celebrating the fact that the man has been given his sight, they kind of go on this inquisition trying to figure out who did it and why this person was performing a miracle on the Sabbath. In short, it's a whole adventure in missing the point. The religious leaders are so focused on their rules and on their restrictions and on the way that people are supposed to be living and following these rules that they missed the life and the gift and the miracle that has happened to this man. And so what we see is the start of a critique from Jesus of the religious leaders, kind of describing two versions of who people are supposed to be, or who kind of the system is supposed to be. Jesus says, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. He's basically calling them thieves and robbers. Now, sheep pen, I don't know how much experience you have with sheep pen. Mine's pretty limited. I had to do some research. But turns out that sheep pen back in this time period were typically stone structures, let's call it in a circle. And they had walls high enough so that predators, wolves, lions, whatever it may be, couldn't see into the pen. So imagine shoulder height stone walls in a circle, and then there was one entry and exit point. It's kind of like TSA of the sheep world, right? There's only one way in and one way out, and they stand at the entrance to make sure that the people who are coming in are supposed to be in, and the sheep can't come out and go wandering off. This is what Jesus is saying. He says, if you don't come in through the gate and you climb over the wall, if you navigate this a different way, you're a thief and a robber. He goes on. He says, the one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. He goes on. And he says, when he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But, he says, they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Okay. I'm going to try to get us out of all of this sheep metaphor and try to kind of bring it back to kind of modern day language. Really, Jesus is talking about the things that we follow, the voices that we listen to, the guidance that we put our trust in life, and how easily we can be misled, and how dangerous the consequences of being misled are for our lives, for our sense of fulfillment and purpose and meaning. Easy, real quick example, just how quickly this happens. I took a year sabbatical from Instagram for my own mental health. In the last week, I've gotten back on Instagram. And in the span of 6 days of being back on Instagram, I have all of these saved videos from all of these experts about all of these new exercise programs that I should be doing that I'm currently not doing, about all of these new diet plans that I should be following that I didn't know about all of these foods that I have to remove from my pantry because they have harmful ingredients in them that I wasn't even aware of, even stuff that says organic on it. Not going to get into that. But apparently it's dangerous. There's a lot of food that you can't eat now that we were told is safe, right? In addition to that, there's all sorts of strategies to grow my side hustle. I didn't even know I was supposed to have a side hustle. Maybe you have a side hustle. But apparently you have to have a side hustle. And there are some really easy ways that you can do that. And then you just parlay that into real estate investment. You don't even have to put any money down. You can take out like a loan for 95% of the value of the property. I didn't know. Apparently I could be a millionaire. And I have missed out on all of this because I took a year break from Instagram. There are all of these experts out there who are pointing us to the better life that we're supposed to be living. But we're not listening. Or are we? Right? There are voices that we listen to all of the time. And sometimes they're on a social media platform. Sometimes they come in the form of books. I think Instagram has now become like the self-help section of the bookstore. I don't even know if they have bookstores anymore, but when they used to have bookstores, imagine what this would look like. It's like a library, but you got to buy everything, kids. This is kind of how it works. There's a whole section about all of the ways that you're supposed to be living your life. All of the voices that you were supposed to be following because they had your best interest in mind. Yes, you had to buy something from them, but they had your best interest in mind. Wink, wink. If you just follow, then you could have the life that you wanted. Now, outside of social media and books, there are still these whispers in our world. These whispers, these voices that are kind of luring us to follow them their way. Maybe it sounds like the whisper and the voice of success, that if you just work a little harder, if you just try a little more, if you get into that school or make those grades or kind of navigate that deal, your life's going to be so much better than it is now. You don't even realize how much better your life can be on the other side of a little bit extra hard work, a little bit more hustle, a little bit more success. Or maybe the voice to you is less about success, but more about control. If you can just keep everybody in the right place, if you can spend all of the time like analyzing and getting anxious about how to show up in the world, but if you can control all the parts and the pieces and the people and the figures, if everybody will just listen to you, everything will be better and you'll be better and your world will be better. Or maybe for you it's comfort. You want to reach a certain level of wealth, or you want to kind of numb out and distract yourself from all of the stress this world offers. See, this is what happens to me on social media. Once I become inundated and stressed out about all of the voices that I'm supposed to be following to become a better version of myself, then I'm like, I just need to watch funny videos. And so then you just doom scroll funny video after funny video, like animals dancing and all sorts of stuff, right? Because you just need to insulate, because sometimes it's just a little too much. And so we just want a little bit of distraction, a little bit of binge watching, a little bit of comfort eating, a little bit of substance to kind of cut the edge off, right? We reach for this stuff because the stress can only be managed if we can just create a comfortable world. Jesus names these voices in our world. The voices look different back then. The voices was the religious system of rules and regulations, of laws and structure that was intended to give people life. It was intended to draw people into a relationship with God. But that's not what happened. The net effect of trying to follow all of the rules and adhere to all of the red tape and regulation just left people stressed, feeling like they weren't doing enough and they weren't good enough and they had to try harder and be more. And Jesus saying, there's a different way. There's another path. Like, hello, how do I get your attention to get you to follow me? And part of the metaphor is not just about the voices externally and the difference between a shepherd and a stranger, but part of the metaphor is a reminder that we're sheep. We don't really like that idea that we're sheep, that we just kind of blindly follow. That's what I was inclined to do when I was hiking on that trail. You know, sheep, I don't know how much you know about sheep, and we're going to talk a whole lot more about them next week. But sheep have very limited, front eyesight. They have incredible peripheral eyesight. They can't see very far in front of their face, and so it's hard for them to look down a path and to know how to navigate, which is why they have to be reliant upon someone to lead them. But they're really observant and aware about what the other sheep around them are doing. We're kind of like that, right? We're not always clear about what way we're supposed to go. We're not always certain about the direction we need to be living our lives, but we have a whole lot of evidence of social proof about the way everybody else is living, and if everybody else is living it, maybe we should just kind of follow along in suit. We kind of follow along blindly in that way. The other problem with sheep, and I'm a sheep too, so don't take this as an insult, the sheep are kind of dumb. They're not real smart. And what ends up happening, and we saw this, Jesus says, when the sheep follow the stranger or are taken out of the pen by the stranger, they run off and they get lost. And this is what happens when sheep escape a pen. They don't, like some animals, if you let the animal out, like maybe you have a dog like this who, when it gets off leash, it's just like run free. It's just like, this is the best my life has ever been. Like I'm free and I just get to run anywhere and everywhere I want. I just get to enjoy the freedom. Or like other animals, you let them out, they escape and they find their way back home or where they think is home. They kind of have this strange homing beacon where they just know how to get back to where they belong and are supposed to go. Sheep are not like that. Sheep just kind of wander aimlessly. They're just kind of confused, making sure they're next to all the other sheep. They just kind of ramble and amble around. And ultimately, it's kind of this stressful, anxious state, which I think, if I'm honest about myself, is how I feel a lot of the time, right? I feel anxious because I don't really always know which way I should be going. There's so many voices that seem enticing. They seem to promise something good on the other side of following them. But I also have this other voice that I'm trying to follow, this truer reality in Jesus. And I kind of feel like this tug-of-war sometimes in my brain where I mostly know this is true, but what if this is also true? And so I just kind of wander aimlessly sometimes. The other problem is not just the voices outside of us, but the voices inside of us, the instincts that we have. And if we're honest, we're not all that reliable, right? In terms of arbiters of our own wisdom and guidance. Let me prove it to you. If you're like, no, I'm a pretty trustworthy person. Not in terms of your ability to follow through on a commitment, but how true you know how to lead and guide yourself. How many of you can think back to your high school girlfriend or boyfriend, and the thought that comes up is, oh my God, what was I thinking? Right? If I could save myself from that catastrophe, I'd go back in time and talk to myself and set myself straight, right? Or you think back to your college years, you're like, oh my God, if I could just have a sit down for 5 minutes with my college self, I would impart so much wisdom upon them. It's so simple. How come I couldn't see it? Right? Or, if I could have my 20s over, woo, I've been a lot of regret I would have spared myself. Or even if you're in your 50s, looking back to your 30s, if I only knew then what I know now, I would have started saving differently, right? I would have invested in real estate with only 95%, loan. You could put 5% down. It's so much easier if I would have known that was true, right? Or maybe you're in your 70s or 80s, and you just think about all of the should-haves and would-haves and could-haves that you can see so clearly now. It doesn't matter how far back you go. It could be 2 years ago. Your version of yourself today, you view as so much wiser and smarter than 2 years or 5 years or 10 years ago you. But guess what 2 years and 5 years and 10 years ago you felt like? How much wiser and smarter than you were as a previous version of yourself. We always think this version of ourselves is sufficiently wise, is sufficiently reliable. But I promise all of you, we could like mark this moment in time and gather back here in 5 years and revisit this conversation, we'd be like, oh my gosh, I was a dummy. I wish I would have known better. And yet we're inclined to trust ourselves, to trust our instincts, as opposed to a deeper and truer reality that's trying to lead us and guide us in a different direction. This is why what I love about what Jesus says here is he doesn't offer us a plan. It's not like 5 steps to get your life on track. Or if you download the free resource and give them your contact information, then they'll follow up with you about a course that you can enroll in that will help you get your life on track, right? He doesn't do any of that. There's no plan. There's no program. There's something way better. What Jesus offers is a person. What Jesus offers is himself. And Jesus is pretty sure that the Pharisees have no clue what he's trying to teach them. And so he revisits it, and he says it again. This is what he says in verse 7. Therefore Jesus said again, very truly, I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. Now, what I love about that word picture is it spoke to reality that all of the listeners in that first century context would have understood. You see, remember the sheep pen that we talked about? You know, the stone circle, it's about shoulder height, that has one entrance and one exit, like TSA? Well, at night, to make sure the sheep were safe, to make sure that nothing came in the pen that wasn't supposed to come in and nothing left the pen that wasn't supposed to come out, what the shepherd would do is they'd lay down across the entrance of the pen. They'd put their own life on the line to make sure that if something was going to try to come in, it had to get through them. And if a sheep was going to try to come out, it had to get through them. This is what Jesus is telling us. He's saying, I'm the gate. I'm going to put my life on the line so that you know who to follow. This is the thing that none of the other external voices in our world will offer us. None of them are willing to put their lives on the line. They want us to put our lives on the line. They want us to bend and contort, to try harder, to sacrifice more, to spend more, to beautify ourselves more, to stress more, to worry more. Any of the mores, it costs us life. Not them. But Jesus says, not with me. With me, it's different. See, that's how we know these other voices are thieves and they're robbers. Because it always demands more of us. That job that you hope to get, or that promotion that you're longing for, or that next career change that you anticipate on the horizon, it's always going to require a little bit more of you, right? Because once you get there, the goalposts are going to move, and you realize that while this was good, the next place could be even better. And so you're going to have to work even harder to get to the next place, spend even more time away from your family, or compromise more on your values and your integrity to go further and to go further, because it's always going to demand more of you. Or maybe it's approval. And so you know that if you could just get that group of people to like you, then that'd be enough. And then they do for a time until they don't. And now there's new reasons or new ways that you have to contort and adjust yourself to fit their own acceptance standards. Right? It's always asking more. It's never saying enough. You can rest. You can be at peace. You don't have to keep striving and stressing and sacrificing. He's trying to offer us a better way. The problem is all of these other ways look like really good deals, right? And a lot of this stuff is good in and of itself. The problem comes when we think that our ultimate fulfillment in life comes from these things. I'm not saying don't work hard in your career. I'm not saying don't be socially polite and get along with people. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not trying to disagree with any of those things. But when we think our ultimate satisfaction in life, our sense of true peace and meaning is going to be found in those pathways, it's just a dead end. It's just a dead end. Many years ago, I was in Italy, and we were there on vacation, and we were at this Roman flea market. Happens every Sunday. And we were walking through, and it was me, my dad, and my brother, and so not really big shoppers, the three of us. And so we were kind of quickly making our way through the flea market when this group of, we'll call them performers, had this kind of like little booth where they were like doing 3-card Monte. And there was a group of people gathered around, and anytime you see a group of people gathered around, typically people are more inclined to go see what was going on. And so we walked over to see what was going on. And they were doing kind of the shell game where you have like the 3 little cups and then a little ball underneath, and the guy's moving the cups around and moving the ball around. And this woman is standing there, and she just keeps laying down 100-euro bills, like, and winning time after time and time after again. And so I think I'm like 20 at the time. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing like the conversion rate. And I'm like, okay, this is like $150 US. Like, this lady is cashing it in. She doesn't even have to like put 5% down, right? And then she steps away. And it's like, oh, this is our turn to play, right? And so the guy's moving the shells around, the cups around, the ball's underneath it, and he makes a mistake. And I see which cup the ball is under. My dad does at the same time, and we both race for our wallets. And so I'm faster, and I get one out. And so I lay down a 50-euro bill, $75 at the time. Sure enough, he lifts that cup up. Nada. Then they pick up their stuff and move on to the next group of people. And that woman who had won all that money follows along behind them. We'd totally gotten played. And I'm like standing there dumbfounded, like, I'm a smart person. How did I just get tricked like this? Well, it's because thieves and robbers, they don't make it obvious, right? They promise you opportunity on the other side. It looks like a good deal, but you end up empty and depleted. And this is what Jesus is trying to warn us about by following all of the other systems and all of the other voices of the world. He's like, there's only one place that's going to lead you to life. And this is what he goes on to say. He says, all who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. May that be true for us. He says, I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. And then he ends and he says, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Lent is a season of introspection, of analyzing, of repenting, returning back. So let me just ask you this morning, the voices that you're listening to, whether external or internal, are they leading you to life? Are they leading you to the life that they promise? Are they leading you to abundance, peace, security, contentment, and joy? Are they just demanding more and more and more? Friends, there's a better way. There's an easier way. And it's found in the person of Jesus. What I love about what Jesus offers us is that it's not another way to try harder. It's just a relationship. It's like what Erin said earlier when she was setting up one of the songs about just walking alongside him, not having to try more, perfect more, to be more, just getting to know God and learning to hear his voice. See, that's what Jesus says about the sheep. He says, my sheep know my voice. But you can't know Jesus' voice if you don't spend time with Jesus, if you don't begin to trust Jesus and follow after him. And so my prayer for us would be that we'd start to maybe spend a little bit more time in prayer, learning to listen, learning to be still, not having to work harder, just trusting that being in God's presence might be enough. Maybe a little bit more time in Scripture, reminding ourselves of who Jesus is. and as a result, who he's called us to be. That, friends, is the path to life. Let me pray for us that God would help us find the way to him. Gracious God, you know us and you love us. You call each of us by name to you. So God, for those of us who are on the fence, may today be the day that we make a commitment, that we begin to choose to follow your path. And for those of us who are already on the path but maybe get discouraged or confused, may we recommit to following after you. God, you offer us fullness of life. May we trust your voice and your voice alone. It's in your name we pray. Amen.